Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week, I continue my series on the realms of Pugmire by talking about the mechanics of, well, Pugmire. This is, of course, the dog-related mechanics. I'm also going to talk about the core mechanics that affect the whole series of games, which are based on the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition OGL, Open Game License. It's a variant rule set, though. It has its own little quirks. Like, it doesn't have inspiration. It has the Fortune Bowl, which I will talk about in due course. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as I talk about the mechanics of Pugmire. As I mentioned, Pugmire is based on the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Open Game License. It's using their system with some tweaks for the setting itself. Among those tweaks are, of course, that all the classes are different. None of the races are the same. But we'll get to that. What you have as the core of the system is a very basic system. You roll 1d20, you add numbers to it. These numbers are based on the modifier of the attribute linked to it, and whether or not you are proficient in that task. Saving throws are based on your attributes. Skills are based on attribute plus proficiency modifier. And, of course, attack rolls are based on your proficiency with the weapon, any modifiers from that, your strength or dexterity, depending on the weapon itself, and, of course, your proficiency. And that's the core of the system. You will roll against a different target number based on the difficulty, and attacks are based on the armor class of what your target is wearing. But, of course, there's a couple things that are part of the system. The first is advantage and disadvantage. What these are instances where you roll 2d20. If you have advantage, you keep the higher roll. If you have disadvantage, you keep the lower roll. And then you have the unique thing for Pugmire: Fortune and the Fortune Bowl. And basically what the Fortune Bowl is you put a bowl in the center of the table, and as the players roleplay, as they do impressive things with their characters, as they choose to fail rolls because it would be in character to do so, they accumulate fortune. And when something happens that's really, really important, a player can ask the rest of the group if he can use some of the fortune. And then he takes one of these fortune, whatever tokens the GM is using to represent fortune, out of the Fortune Bowl and hands it back to the GM. And he can do a number of things with that. The most common is reroll a die, keeping the higher result. And you can even do this with advantage or disadvantage. So yes, if you had disadvantage, you can use fortune to re-roll the lower of the die, keeping the higher result. It's kind of a neat little rule trick, but other things, of course, are some abilities, especially for magic users, are powered by fortune. Some tricks require the expenditure of fortune. And you can spend fortune to interrupt the initiative order and take your action immediately. And, oh yes, a nice fun little thing is that spellcasters can use the fortune to cast spells even when they are out of spell slots. You know, in that case, it's representing the pulling the last dregs of energy out to do whatever they need to do. Or, you know, those great moments in a story where the wizard is standing on the bridge and he's pulling the deep reserves to make a fiery final stand. That's what you can do with fortune. I kind of like fortune a little bit better than inspiration, which does almost the same thing, because it's more evocative to me. And also, oh yeah, you don't have just one. But that is the core of Pugmire. Let's now talk about where it really shows its identity. Character creation. So the first thing you're going to be doing when you're making a character for Pugmire is you're going to be picking your breed. They say pick calling first. I'm going to personally go with breed. And your breeds fall into a number of small categories. Companions. These are small dogs, basically the lapdog breeds, like Chihuahua, Papillon, Pomeranian, and of course, pugs. They are a charismatic breed because they're used to getting along with people. People meaning dogs. And they get a +2 to their charisma. Fettles are the sort of tenacious types of dogs. The Bulldog, the Dalmatian, the Doberman, the Mastiff, the Great Pyrenees. They're the dogs that have the really strong jaws. And they're very hardy. They get a bonus to Constitution, a +2 to Constitution. Of course, the herders are, well, herd dogs. Collies, corgis, sheepdogs, that sort of thing. They get a bonus to wisdom because, you know, hey, they sit around and they know how to herd things, to direct things. And apparently that's considered part of wisdom. Pointers are, well, pointers. You know, bloodhounds, dachshunds, rat terriers, Weimaraners, those sorts of things, animals. The ones that are used to go after something, point the way. They're sort of the classic hunting dogs. They get a +2 to intelligence. Next you have the runners. You know, the speed dogs. Borzois. Wolfhounds. Afghans. Greyhounds. They get a +2 to dexterity, and they're basically fast. That's their big thing. And then, of course, you have the workers, the working dogs. Akita, Husky, Malamute, those sorts of animals. The ones who they don't sit around doing something. They want to work. They want to be pulling that sled or whatever it is that they particularly do. They get a +2 to strength. And then you have the mutts. The ones that they're not from one of the pedigreed purebred families. They're mixed heritages. And they don't get +2 to any single attribute. Instead, they get +1 to any 2 attributes. So they're a little bit more versatile and not as focused as any of the others. Now, the callings, these are where it gets interesting. These are your classes. And each one kind of fits sort of into some of the classic archetypes. Artisans, for example. These are your wizards. They're low hit points, 6 plus Constitution modifier, but they get a they have D6 stamina dice. But they're your wizardly types of magic users. They go around unlocking the secrets of man and learning how to use that. Guardians are your typical fighter. They have a 10 plus Constitution modifier, stamina points, and their primary abilities are actually charisma and strength, compared to the artisan's primary abilities of charisma and intelligence. Now note, in all these cases, your primary abilities, you are proficient in saving throws for those. So that means Guardians are proficient in saves against both strength and charisma, which is kind of unusual for a warrior archetype. Hunters are they're sort of the ranger type. Sort of. They are, of course, dexterity and wisdom for their primary abilities, and 10 plus Constitution modifier, stamina points per level. Ratters are sort of the rogue types. Name Ratter comes from the fact that they're the ones who go hunting rats. And, that's in closed places, requires stealth, etc., etc. Their primary abilities are Constitution and Dexterity, and they have 8 plus Constitution modifier stamina points per level. And they kind of tend to be the, as I said, the roguelike ones, but they also tend to be the ones who do precision attacks. They don't exactly automatically get stealth attacks or sneak attacks, but they are an interesting variation. Shepherds are the cleric equivalents. Intelligence and wisdom are their primary abilities. They get 8 plus Constitution modifier stamina points per level. And they are the ones who who casts the divine-like spells, the healing spells. Strays are sort of the barbarian analog. 12 plus Constitution modifier, stamina points per level, and Constitution and Strength as their primary abilities. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting here is every breed, calling, and background has what are called tricks. Tricks are kinda, sorta like feats, but they're also kinda, sorta not. They are focused abilities based on your calling, your breed, and your background. And every character starts off with one breed trick, one calling trick, and one background trick. Now, I'm going to take a moment here and just talk about how the tricks are organized. Your first tricks are... I'm going to talk about the Stray here. Stray's first tricks are Simple Weapon Aptitude, Martial Weapon Aptitude, Light Armor Aptitude, Shield Aptitude. And then the Stray gets to pick either the Rage trick, the classic Barbarian Rage, or Unarmored Defense, where he gets a bonus to his armor class when he's not wearing armor. Now, if you take a look at something like, say, the Fettle, their trick is Hardy Constitution. They basically get bonuses whenever they're doing a Constitution check. They don't get a choice in this. They automatically have to take that as their first trick. And then each background has a trick associated with it. Like if you are an acolyte, you spent time studying in the Church of Man, you get the trick Acolyte of Man. If you grew up among common folk, you get the trick Folk Hero. And most of the background tricks tend to be bonuses to dealing with people in certain environments, in certain situations. Like the Acolyte of Man is a bonus on anyone who is a believer in the Church of Man. The Rank has its privileges trick for Soldier means you have bonuses dealing with people in the military. Now, there are a number of other tricks for each calling, each breed, though there aren't any additional background tricks. But where things get interesting is as your character advances. Character advancement goes up to level 10, and only level 10. Once you hit level 10, you are an old dog. And as we all know, old dogs can't learn new tricks. Now, when your character advances in level, a number of things happen. Of course, the first bunch of these are standard. You add stamina points equal to what your calling gives you for stamina. You gain another stamina die. Spellcasters gain 2 additional spell slots, plus another one if their Constitution modifier increased. And spellcasters get 2 more spells. every 2 levels, your proficiency bonus increases by 1. So at level 1 and 2, your proficiency bonus is plus 2. 3 to 4, it's plus 3, etc., etc. To a maximum of plus 6 at levels 9 and 10. In addition, every time you level up, you get 1 improvement. That improvement can be to increase an ability score by 1, up to a maximum of 20. Also, take a new skill. You can take a new calling, breed, or aptitude trick. Or you can refine an existing calling or masterwork trick. Now, what is refining a trick? I'm glad you asked. Basically, your calling tricks they're a basic single thing, but then you can refine them, improve them. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's kind of tricky, and it depends on the individual trick. For example, the Stray's unarmored defense. At the basic level is a Stray gets 10 plus Constitution modifier plus Dexterity modifier plus Shield for his base armor class. He can take up to 3 times a refinement on it, which increases the defense by an additional plus 1. Okay? The Shepherd's Prayers to Man. This is what allows them to cast their spells. And upon taking it, Shepherd learns 3 basic spells that can always be used through the Shepherd's faith. Bless, Sacred Flame, and Spare the Dying. In addition, the Shepherd can choose 2 first-level spells. One refinement you can take increases the spell level you can take. So, you could literally... I hit level 2. I'm going to use my improvement to refine the spell level I can take for my Prayers to Man and be able to cast 2nd level spells immediately. It can be taken multiple times, though spell levels don't go quite as high in Pugmire as they do in Dungeons & Dragons. Shepherd can also take a refinement to learn 4 spells at that level instead of 2. You know, it's always kind of a trade-off what you're going to do, but that's a lot of power, as is increasing an attribute and taking a skill. And that's pretty much the core of Pugmire. The systems all work like that for everyone. And I'm going to be talking about the variations on the systems when I do Monarchies of Mao and Pirates of Pugmire. But next week, join me as I talk about the setting portion of Monarchies of Mao. And until then, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming!